Hello and welcome to another edition of Teaching Restored, where we help teachers of the gospel of Jesus Christ teach and be better, more effective teachers. I'm Kevin Jones.
And I'm Julie Hilliard, and I'm actually really excited about what we're talking about today. But first, I have to let everybody know that Kevin was really tempted to introduce the podcast today as Chevy Chase.
Julie Hilliard. Just like that.
It was very funny. And I wish he would have done it. And now I have the giggles just a little bit, but I'm trying to stifle it. So serious Julie channeled.
Okay, yes. But not too serious.
100%.
Okay,
not
good.
Too serious because we like to have fun. Okay, so I want to share an experience that I had recently. And I want to kind of process through it and dissect a little bit because it was very instructive for me. And these are the ones where I feel a little bit like kind of humbled, and I've come on here a few times, and some of the things that I've shared are still pretty raw and pretty fresh. This one could potentially make me look bad, but sometimes when we look dumb, we kind of help people the most. So I'm willing to just kind of put myself out there. Okay, so recently I had a class with the seniors. So I teach the seniors on Sunday. And after church, my husband received a text message from someone saying that it seems as though there may have been some cloudy doctrine taught to the seniors today.
Is that the term, cloudy doctrine?
Cloudy doctrine, okay. Yes.
Very good.
And I teach the seniors. And this person knew that. And so I was like, oh, cloudy doctrine. And so I'm processing through what it possibly could have been. If someone told you that you had taught cloudy doctrine, tell me your honest first thoughts.
Honestly, okay.
Be honest.
Honestly, this is what I would think. How cool. Okay. I want to know what it is, because I don't think that I teach cloudy doctrine, but if I did, I want to know about it. And how do I fix that? And if not, maybe it's just a subtle difference or whatever, but I don't think
you aren't normal.
I know I'm not, and that is not normal. No. And no. I think most people may get a little offended, like, I did not teach cloudy doctrine. And right. I think that would be normal. Totally get it.
Okay. But what you said was kind of my reaction too, because we are nerds. Like, we really are. Right. And I do have the total actual belief that feedback is the breakfast of champions. Like, I love feedback. I value feedback. I think it's amazing. And if I'm being totally honest, my first thought was to think through everything that I'd said and how I would defend it.
Sure. Okay.
So like my defenses for why I taught it the way that I did. If I'm being totally honest, I knew the point that he was talking about in my brain. I immediately could go, oh, I bet I know what it was. Okay.
Makes sense.
First thought, though, I would guess of most people is to try and defend mentally what it was that they had already taught. And so I decided that I was going to call this person and have a conversation with them. This was easy for me because I love this person dearly. And I know that it was coming from a really, really good place. But let's pretend maybe that you, for the sake of conversation, that you don't know this person and that you maybe don't know them as well. Or let's say that you have a perception of this person that maybe isn't quite as favorable. Maybe you label them as being critical, or you label them as being kind of narrow-minded, or, whatever, like, pick the label. I think that the principles that we're going to teach and kind of process through today are applicable no matter what the label is that you give them, that you can't in your mind write someone off because of a story that you've written about them and therefore write off the feedback. I just kind of want to put that out there, that our job when we receive feedback is not to put up a wall, but actually to invite it in. And then we have the privilege of sifting through it and deciding what we do and don't want to take. Just because somebody gives you feedback doesn't mean that you have to take all of it. It's all the truth. It's all exactly right. And you therefore need to embrace it and adjust accordingly, or embrace it and be offended, or whatever. There is no script. The only thing is that you have to invite it and welcome it. That's my number one piece of advice. And then you get to sift. So my initial reaction, like I said, knowing this person, loving this person, so it's way easier, was to kind of sift through and go, oh, I bet that's what he was talking about or he was referencing. I'm going to share the rest of the story in just a minute. I started thinking a little bit about feedback and about the different reactions that people have to feedback. And there were some chapters in First Nephi that I read recently that contrast the way that Laman and Lemuel received feedback with the way that Lehi received feedback. So I just kind of want to look at some of these verses. And when I looked at them and I dug into them a little bit, I was able to go into some different books of scripture that helped to clarify some of the points that were being made in and teach me a little bit more about feedback.
I like it.
So let's turn to chapter 16 of First Nephi. And we're going to start with chapter 1. And I'm going to jump around just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. And we're going to start in chapter 1. And Nephi has just actually given Laman and Lemuel some pretty hard feedback. And he,
wait, so you said chapter 1.
36.
You mean verse 1?
So,
chapter 16.
Verse 1.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're good.
We're good. Heavy voice.
All right.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so looking at, oh my gosh, people seriously would turn us off. They should turn us off right then.
Right there.
The end. Hit pause.
Goodbye.
Exit out. Swipe up. Done. Okay.
But if you happen to stick around.
Yeah, if you're still here, thank you. Thank you for forgiving. I won't do a voice. Thank you for forgiving us. Here we go. We've repented. Okay. Verse 36 of the previous chapter kind of gives you an idea. The wicked are rejected from the righteous and also from that tree of life whose fruit is most precious and most desirable. Okay. So Nephi's teaching them some stuff in the framework of the tree of life. And he's also, because Nephi's got this vision, right, of trying to learn what his father saw. And in the process of it, he's like saying, Laman and Lemuel, dudes, let me tell you where you land in this vision right now. And they're like, ah. And so when we get to chapter 16,
that was a good imitation of Laman and Lemuel, by the way.
I wish you could see my face if you're listening to the podcast. Okay, so it says, now, came to pass that after I, Nephi, had made an end of speaking to my brethren, if I'm Laman and Lemuel, I'm like, you mean made an end of lecturing us? Right? Chastising us?
Right.
That's what they're saying, right? Behold, they said unto me, thou hast declared unto us hard things, more than we are able to bear. My guess is that it was in this tone, how dare you? Like, how dare you?
Sure.
Okay, so someone gives you feedback. It gives you a little bit of a sting, and you're like, how dare you? Thou hast declared unto me things that are kind of hard. Like, that wasn't nice. And then it came to pass that I said unto them, this is Nephi speaking, I knew that I had spoken hard things, right? Like, I know. And the reason that they were hard is because they were true. And then he goes down, and at the end, he's like, the guilty taketh the truth to be hard, for it cutteth them to the very center. Okay, that's a dramatic phrase. I want to apply it to kind of what I experienced, right? I wasn't offended by this, but we sometimes can be a little bit like cut, a little bit injured, a little bit hurt, a little bit defensive, a little bit whatever when we get feedback. So I thought, this is interesting because it said the guilty taketh the truth to be hard. And I thought, guilty. Okay. Am I guilty? I should probably assume that somewhere in what I said, like somewhere in this feedback, there's going to be an element of truth. That's a great assumption to lead with when somebody's giving you feedback. So let's look at guilty, footnote B. Okay. Let's look at John 3. So New Testament, book of John, chapter 3. And we're going to look at verse 21. So it says here, and this is maybe, let me kind of explain why this appeals to me. It says, but he that doeth truth. Okay, so let's assume that you, as a teacher, are really trying to act with the best of integrity.
Okay.
Okay, you
Of
are
course.
teaching the truth. You have the best of intentions. We're going to call that you are a he or a she that doeth truth. Okay, he that doeth truth cometh to the light. So I think about things that we put in the dark. What types of things do you, Kevin Jones, put in the dark?
Things that I don't want other people to see.
Great. So what would that be? Like things that are embarrassing,
Sure.
things that
Yeah.
are like that you're ashamed of,
Right. Things
things
that may
that,
not go with the cultural norm or what we all expect, but that I still do anyways because I like my guilty pleasures or whatever it may be, or my
I
habits,
mean,
or
we
yeah,
could bad habits. We could even say sin, right?
sure.
Okay. So contrasting in your mind, the things that we kind of, so what happens to something that is in the dark when you bring it to the light? What's the effect? If you have something that you've put in the dark, right? You've kept it in the dark, your little baby, you're precious, and then you
Yes.
bring it into the light. What
Then everyone
happens?
sees
What's
it.
okay? Who else besides everyone?
Me.
You, right?
Okay. I see it.
You can
Okay.
see
Yeah.
it more clearly,
Yep. Yep.
right?
True.
Even you kind of can't see things very well for what they actually are when they're in the
When they're in the
dark, even
dark.
if they're your little precious that you're stroking and holding in the dark, right? You even don't see it very clearly.
Okay.
And so bringing it into the light allows you even to see your own thing. Maybe this own little thing is your belief. Maybe it's a comforting belief to you that you haven't examined very closely because you like the story that you've written about it. You like how you see it. It speaks to you. So you haven't even looked at it that closely because you like where it
Sure.
is.
Of course.
So it's not that
Yes.
you're intentionally keeping it in the dark, but bringing something into the light allows you to see it more clearly. And so going back to that scripture, what do you think this means then? He that doeth truth cometh to the light. Do you make a connection between what I'm talking about right now
Well,
with
truth is
feedback?
light.
Okay.
But if we, so for this is for me, when we do truth, when we act on truth, it's an intentional, typically an intentional thing.
Mhm.
And we are trying to become more like Christ. We may not have that exact thought in mind, but we want to follow this truth. When we do that, it will naturally bring out other parts of our life into the light of, oh, that doesn't actually play along with the truth that I'm trying to accomplish or that I'm trying to do. There shows some conflict in there of something needs to change. Do I go back to what I was doing and put it back in the dark, or do I need to change this?
Okay. So if like what I hear you saying, I'm going to try and summarize it and tell me if this is what you are saying. If we have the best of intentions, we want truth, right? We do with truth. We're doing everything we can to do what is
Great.
right. Then we cometh intentionally on purpose, seeking to the light.
Good.
We look for opportunities to shine a light on things so that we see them more clearly.
Good.
So applying this to this idea of feedback, if we truly want to be the best teachers that we possibly can, the best parents, the best missionaries, the best whatever, and somebody tells us something that we don't like to hear about our own teaching, and we say, okay, I want to bring this to the light. Like that's what I think Christ would have us do is say, oh, you see it differently. Let's shine a light on it together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what if it
And
makes
so,
us uncomfortable?
okay, that's the point. Do you think that shining a light on things is always comfortable? What if this light that you're shining onto something is a sin that you have held in the
Mm-hmm.
dark for a super long time and you decide to shine a light on it through repentance and it actually requires you to go into your bishop and have a conversation and shine a light on this thing together? You think there's going to be some discomfort?
Mhm.
There better be, right? But oh my gosh, what's the fruit of that? So if you have something that someone has said to you, instead of going, oh my gosh, how dare you? I take it the truth to be hard. It is cutting me to my very core. We go, hey, he that doeth truth cometh to the light. Like, let's bring this out into the light. Let's shine a light on it together. And guess what? I might be uncomfortable, but am I going to grow? Yup. Am I going to see it more clearly? Yup. I think that one of the things that is part of our own personal growth and development and becoming who we have the potential to become is shining a light on the ugly sometimes and
Mm.
inviting that into our lives because of the opportunities for growth that come from it. Does that make sense?
I think that's my new favorite phrase. Shining the light on the ugly.
I mean, it's
I
kind of
like
true
that.
though, right?
Yeah.
You're with me. You're tracking, right?
Right. Okay, let me add this in there though. Sometimes
Okay.
it may just be okay, I'm going back to your example. You're going to tell us how it turns out, but let me talk about how it may, possibilities of turning out. Maybe they come to you and say, "Oh, there's cloudy doctrine," and they misheard you. And
Yeah.
so you go, "Oh, okay, well that was just a mishearing," and that's easy to clear up. And because of it, we now actually trust each other more because we've communicated this and we're on that level, and that's great. Or it could be that they saw it from one perspective, you see it from another perspective. They seem to clash, but maybe they don't. And maybe it's just, oh, you saw it that way, I saw it this way. Maybe we just disagree on that, but actually the doctrine itself is okay. And it's still, again, it's a time for you two to connect and say, okay, we're coming together more unified mind, and you trust each other even more because of that. I mean, or maybe it is my error and I need to fix it.
Right. But all of what you're describing is part of the process of shining a light on something.
Yes.
So let's say you saw it from two different sides. Well, when you shine the light on it, you can see it from all sides better, right? Let's say that it was misheard. Well, when you shine a light on it, you actually are like, oh, that's what was actually said.
Right.
Right. And so all of that is part of the process of shining a light on it, of you as a teacher seeking, coming on purpose to the light and saying, oh, you've got some feedback. Hey, let's shine a light on it. Let's talk about it more. And it could be as simple as some of those scenarios that you've described. In fact, I would say that oftentimes it's probably that.
Mm-hmm.
And other times you're going to
Mm-hmm.
discover that it actually is truth and you see it totally differently, even with the light shined on it.
Right. I
And that's
agreed.
okay too.
I love that.
That's
Yes.
totally okay
Yes.
too. And we'll talk about that actually more in just a minute. Let me go to
Okay.
Proverbs for a second. Okay, so if you bust open Proverbs, this is another cross reference for those verses. Oh, yeah, I can't remember. Is it C to C? Yeah. So in verse 2, the cross reference for C is with the word truth. And it's Proverbs chapter 15, or Proverbs 15, I should
Mm-hmm.
say, verse 10.
Verse 10. Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Correction is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way, and he that hath reproof shall die.
That hateth.
Oh, that's what I meant to say. I read hateth in my brain and it came out my mind hath. Okay?
Right.
That actually totally changes the meaning of the whole
It
verse.
does.
Let me say that last line one more time. He that hateth reproof shall die. Okay.
There we
Can we
go.
put that into layman's terms? That last part in particular that I totally just botched?
Layman's terms as an L-A-M-E-N or L-A-Y-M-E-N.
Let's not spell it because I actually don't know which one I mean. Into simpler terms, Kevin, please.
Sorry.
Put
Okay.
that in modern language
In
for
modern
me.
language. Those who have forsaken the way being the gospel of Jesus Christ, they hate it. They don't like it.
Right.
Look at Laman and Lemuel, right?
Right.
And he that hateth reproof shall die. Because repentance is all about changing, and reproof leads to change to become closer to Christ and more like him. So, of course, if we will spiritually die if we don't become more like him. So if we hate reproof, then we're actually going the opposite way of Jesus Christ.
How are we going to get corrected? How are we ever going to change if nobody ever tells us, oh no, this thing that you didn't see clearly that was in the dark, oh my gosh, like I see it differently. Oh, wow. Now this is an opportunity for me to change. How are you ever going to change if someone, could be from above, could be from beside you, but maybe even directed by the Spirit, though sometimes you're like, he's kind of condescending. I don't think that he's being guided by the Spirit. No, get rid of your dang stories. You never know who Heavenly Father is using as an instrument in his hands to help you grow.
I like it.
Right?
Yes.
And so that was one of the things I think we have to really say, that this is an absolute necessity for our own spiritual growth and development. He that hateth reproof, if you're going to shun it, if you're going to push it away, if you're going to put up your walls, if you're going to set up boundaries, if you're going to have 1,000 defense mechanisms, you're going to die spiritually.
Okay. So let me say this, and maybe this is where you're going, but with this whole reproof thing, right?
Yeah.
This person that came to you and talked to you about cloudy doctrine, or didn't come to you, but roundabout.
And that actually, so let me make a point. Always go directly to the person.
Agreed.
And so that's why I went directly to him. I wish that they would have come directly to me. That actually was something that I said out loud. Please don't go to somebody else. Like, not even my husband. Not to me.
But it's the same. But how many people actually come to you? How many, and you and any teacher listening or whatever, how many times do you actually have someone come to you and say, I know a better way of teaching, or you did this wrong, or it doesn't happen? So the only reproof would come by the Spirit. And if we're not really asking the Spirit, if we're not asking God about how can I do better, maybe there is no reproof coming at all. And we just float along and we're do.
Yeah. Right. And that's scary, actually.
It's
really interesting. The way that you just said that made me think of something else. Like, that was really courageous of this person to offer that feedback. And it must have been something that he was continuing to think about. If you have a persistent thought, what do you usually say? Oh, maybe that's coming from the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to assume that if somebody is thinking hard enough, long enough, frequently enough about something, that they might even be interpreting that as a prompting from the Spirit, that I need to go and talk to so-and-so about, something that I heard.
Yeah.
Something that stuck out to me in class that didn't set well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I actually have to say that I feel, because of the spirit in which he approached me, that he was guided by the Spirit to actually have this discussion with me. And I think that's a healthy frame of reference. Like, that's a healthy paradigm for us to look at, thank you for your courage. And you probably were prompted by the Spirit to offer this feedback. So let's shine a light. Let's talk about it. Right? Okay. So if you keep going in First Nephi and you go to chapter 17, you see another example of Laman and Lemuel responding. Look at verse 48. He speaks some words to them, and they were angry with him. And it says, and they were desirous to throw me into the depths of the sea. Okay, so let's not let it get to that point. Like, if we can take feedback from people, hopefully they won't ever get to the point where when they're teaching the class, they're sitting there shooting daggers at you from their eyes and desirous to throw you into the depths of the sea. So them coming to you when it's first, like, creating kind of that I'm approachable thing, it's probably a little bit healthy, right? Okay, 2 Nephi chapter 1, verse 26. Hold on one second. I got to make sure.
Yeah, I have that. The phrase I think you're looking for highlighted right there. Yep.
So I took out my wrong scriptures. Tell me what phrase you have highlighted.
And that which ye call anger was the truth.
Yes. Okay. So sometimes, tell me what you think I'm thinking, actually.
I'm going to read Julie's mind.
Do it. I want
Todd
you to.
Can't even do that. Why do you expect me to do that? That's not.
Kevin, you're really smart.
Okay.
Tell me what you're thinking then. Why did that phrase stick out to you?
And that which ye call anger was the truth. Okay. When I hear things from people, sometimes I have an emotional reaction to it.
Okay.
And I read so much more into it than is actually said. So my wife may say something. I'm like, no, I can't believe you said that. And then she may say, actually, all I said was this. I mean, I wasn't even thinking what you were saying, but I took it that way. Right. So I may think someone's angry, or I may think they're trying to get on me or be mean to me. No, they just said something, and it's my biases that created that whole internal script that I went through, and the whole life that actually didn't exist.
Okay. So that's exactly it. Let me ask you. So when you think about what Nephi said to Laman and Lemuel, he's like, only if it lands, like if it only when it's the truth, are you actually going to have those hard feelings about it?
Right.
So when you get angry, have you ever thought, oh, I don't think I'd have any emotion about this if there weren't an element of truth to it?
No,
You don't think that?
I never think that. Maybe I
Okay.
should, but I don't think
So,
I don't think I ever have. No.
okay, so let me challenge you for just a second. If you were to think back on some of those conversations, when someone says something to you that you know for a fact is not true, does it just roll off?
Yes.
Okay. So if it doesn't roll off, what if that was your clue?
Yes.
That,
That's a
wait a
good
minute,
point.
there must be an element of truth to this.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's actually a pretty safe assumption for us to make.
Yeah,
That
I
if
like
I'm
that.
having kind of a visceral reaction to this, or I feel defensive. So when we've talked about this in the past, that defensiveness is an indication that like psychological safety is at risk. And when we feel ourselves getting defensive, it means that we feel unsafe. And one of the most vulnerable feelings that we have that makes us feel unsafe is when we know that we're wrong in any
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
And so I personally think that if we find ourselves being defensive, that we should assume that there's probably an element of truth to what it is that they're sharing with us.
That's a great point. And
So,
we may find in the end that there isn't, but at least if nothing else, we should look at it and
right.
bring it into the
And so
light.
I think that what I'm saying is that that paradigm won't lead you astray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say that probably 8 times out of 10, there is an element of truth in what it is that they're saying to you.
Yeah. I like that.
And that element of truth might not actually be that you were wrong, but maybe you phrased it in a way that could have been misinterpreted. That's on you. Maybe you, and man, that's instructive too, because then you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to phrase it that way anymore. I had an experience, I think I've shared this in a previous podcast, where I was talking about a friend of mine who had been abused. And I referred to her as a victim. And somebody in there was so upset with me and walked out of class and said, she's not a victim, she's a survivor. And I was, wow, like immediately I felt defensive. And I was like, well, let me explain to you what I was thinking. And I was thinking this, and I was thinking, she's still in the
Mm,
middle of it. She's still a victim. She's not a survivor yet because she's still going on. Da, 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 da. But she was right. From her frame of reference, it was so instructive to me that someone who is on the other side of abuse would really, like, it would speak to them more if I referred to this person as a survivor, even an acknowledgement of that.
that's
So
great.
we again might just be receiving more instruction about the way that we phrase things, maybe coming across wrong, the maybe our tone. So even if the point wasn't wrong, there may have been some truth in what they're sharing because something else needs to be corrected.
I like
Fair
it.
enough?
Yes,
So maybe it
very.
wasn't the doctrine itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's look at a better example, and then I'm going to tell you the end of the story.
Okay.
So if we go to First Nephi chapter 16, verse 25, now it is Lehi being chastened by the Lord. Will you read that verse and tell me what Lehi's response is to being chastened?
First Nephi 16:25.
You got it.
And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord came unto my father, and he was truly chastened because of his murmurings against the Lord, insomuch that he was brought down into the depths of sorrow.
Okay. So what was Lehi's reaction to being chastened, getting feedback, basically.
I think he recognized it, or else he wouldn't have been sorrowed, right? He wouldn't have felt sorrow if he didn't recognize that, oh, I did something wrong. And when we realize that, we want to change it. And
Right.
that's what I would assume was where Lehi was.
So, what is a prerequisite to Lehi feeling sorrowful for this and recognizing the truth and what it was? What is a prerequisite?
That it had to be brought before us. Is that what
Okay,
you're
so that it
getting at?
had to be brought before him. But, like, what did Lehi have to do?
He had to go, well, I'm assuming he
Like,
had to
could
go look for it.
Lehi, okay, so he was open to it. He may have been
Okay.
looking for it,
Yes.
right? But he was open to it, which is, I think, the prerequisite to that is humility.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Lehi would have been prideful, then he would have had the responses that we were describing a little bit earlier of maybe putting up a wall, of getting defensive, of, wait a minute, I was not murmuring. Those were actually just me venting a little bit to my sons. Oh, no, this was just me having a conversation with my wife where I was trying to empathize with her. Justification, rationalization,
Sure.
da 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 da, right? All of those things are forms of pride. And so if Lehi would have come with any of that or led with any of that, that could have, like, he would have received the feedback very, very differently versus we know that he was in a place of humility and submission because it led him to be sorrowful, right?
Great point.
And
Yes.
so I'm thinking about, like, this feedback, whether or not the actual cloudy doctrine thing was accurate or whatever the feedback is that somebody gives you, there may be even an ounce of truth in some part of it, right? And me having enough humility to be looking for, welcoming that is the goal. And yeah, if I've got things to work on, I'm not going to be devastated, sorrowful, right? It's a little bit different than the scenario here with Nephi where he was murmuring against the Lord.
Just a little.
But I am going to be like, ooh, okay, I really need to do that. Like, I I could have done some damage if I would have continued on this track. Oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that this was something that was brought to my attention. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. I love
Okay,
that. Okay.
excellent. Should I share the end of the story?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm dying to hear it. Yes. I want to hear
Sure, okay. So all of these things are going through my mind. And when I called this guy, like I said, it was easier for me because of the fact that I really love this person. I have so much respect for them. It was his son that was in the class. And his son had come home and said, hey, Sister Hilliard said, and then he was talking about something having to do. I'll just give you what it is because I think it'll make a little bit more sense rather than me talking around what the
Sure.
actual feedback was. Said something about Mother Eve in class. And it was when we were studying a little bit about the fall in Second Nephi chapter 9 and chapters 2 and 9. Like, we were kind of in the middle of those.
Okay.
And as we were talking about the fall, with a quote that President Oakes had shared at one point about Mother Eve and kind of I wish I had the quote right up in front of me. I'm sure I have it somewhere. About just what she did being courageous and, such a beautiful gift to us. I should find the quote. Anyway, there was this quote from Elder Oaks in my mind, and then what I shared about it was along those lines. And it was interesting because what landed in this person's ears, the senior, was that I was kind of advocating girl power, like that it was a
Mm,
kind of a feminist motivated
gotcha.
frame of it. And you
Understandable.
can
Sure.
see, right? Right.
Yep.
You can totally see it. And so what it prompted was a discussion with him and his dad. And his dad took out Jesus the Christ and looked some of this up. And I think he also referenced that he had taken out either Marvelous Work and Wonder or Articles of Faith. I just remember it being some of those missionary books that we had. So he'd taken out some books, done some research, had a great conversation with his son, clarified what I was, maybe trying to say, blah, blah, blah. Great conversation, settled, put a bow on it, done. So in my mind, when he related that to me, I'm like, yes, this student, kid, senior, amazing kid, wonderful man. I guess he's a man now because he's a senior, right? went home and talked to his parents. Like, that is a victory to me.
That
So
is.
I was thrilled. I was thrilled about that. And I actually said that to him. I'm like, I'm so glad that he came home and he talked to you about it. That's amazing. And it goes back to a podcast that we just recorded that may or may not be before this one. I don't know, where we talked about the idea that, church is home centered, church supported. And so what he's teaching in his
Yes.
home is even more than what we're going to be teaching at church. And so that to me is a teaching victory that they had a conversation. And so done. I felt great about that. I could have been offended.
You
I
could.
could have totally been offended that he thought that my comment was saying, something contradictory to the doctrine of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so from his frame of reference and from some of the things that he shared with me, I actually found that I disagreed with him, because my perception of the story of Eve comes from two things. It comes from, well, three things: the scriptures, the temple, and some of the instruction we receive in the temple, and specifically how I've interpreted it. And then it also comes from an experience that I've had personally with my son, Matthew. And I'm just going to share that experience really
Okay.
quickly. And I may have shared it in some regard before. My personal feeling, and this is not necessarily gonna settle with everybody. The reason I'm sharing it is because I want to make a point. Is that Eve was one of the choicest women ever on earth, that she had a profound mission. And I think she probably understood a little bit. And that's not what it says in Jesus the Christ. And that's not what is quoted. It was that she kind of ignorantly, if you will, entered this. I personally feel like she made the hard choice. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
decided, like, knowing a little bit about God's plan, knowing a little, I mean, how much I don't know, but that she had the courage to make the hard decision. Whether or not that's the truth is irrelevant for this discussion. Part of the reason that I feel that is because I had an experience with when before Matt was born, we had decided to name him Matt. Matt is my brother-in-law's name, and he had Down syndrome. And so, and if I've shared this before, I'm really sorry, but um, we had decided to name him Matt, and all of a sudden I had a feeling that if we named him Matt, my son would also have special needs. And that terrified me, and I didn't want it. I rejected it. And so I'm like, Todd, we got to come up with a different name. I'm not okay with that. And so he's like, okay, let's come up with a different name. I don't know if it was psychological or what. I just couldn't do it. And so we mulled over names for quite some time, and we knew we had to name him Matt. And when we decided to name him Matt, I, in that moment, fully embraced the fact that he would have special needs. It was me
Mm.
accepting and saying to Heavenly Father, you know what? Whatever it is, this is what I feel you want for us. And I feel like I made the hard choice at that moment, kind of with a little bit of
Right.
understanding, not really clearly being able to see anything, but knowing it was God's will. I made the hard choice. And that moment for me has been a source of
Mm.
strength and comfort in my journey with my son. And so I feel very connected to this aspect of Mother Eve's journey. It is different from what this man believes. Different. We are looking at the same doctrine and we're seeing it differently. And it was so interesting to me because I thought, wow, is that okay? So what's your feeling on that? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I think it's
How
part.
and why?
I think it's part of the wrestle. I think it's part of the things of we. You have one perspective, he has another perspective, and I'm assuming, probably, maybe, that when you talked about your different perspectives, you each learned something new from it. And
Yes.
that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing, is learning from each other's perspectives. We're not going to have the full complete picture, so why not try to gather those extra perspectives?
Mhm. I love it. That is the process of coming to the light and shining a light on these different perspectives.
Right.
And so I love that in the gospel of Jesus Christ, every single one of us needs to acknowledge that we don't have a complete picture of the truth. And if we think that we have more of it or are entitled to more of it than somebody else, we got to check ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And who's to say? So looking at the scenario, is he right or am I right? Does it even matter?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't even matter. So, in my opinion, it's irrelevant what is actually true in this case. What is most relevant to me is that each of us has our own individual testimony of the role that Eve played in Heavenly Father's plan, and that we both have our own personal testimony of the role that Jesus Christ plays in that plan, which is all part of one complete picture. It doesn't matter exactly the details of how we see it. And what I felt from this is that it was a very instructive opportunity for me to see how somebody else sees it, and then to recognize how my phrasing of it might have actually caused some rub.
Sure.
And I can appreciate why it did based on how he sees it. And I do think that in the process of discussing it, that at least I can speak from my own experience, I gained more respect for him, and because of the fact that he was open to having that conversation with me, and I have a better relationship with him as a result of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also was taught as a teacher that I have to be very open to the fact that other people might see things differently, and I need to invite that discussion in class more. And whether or not that person would have had the courage to call me on it in front of all of his peers, I doubt, right? However, making space for other people to see it differently is actually part of what we, I think, are trying to facilitate in our discussions. It's like you said, everybody benefits from all of the different perspectives that
Right.
are brought to light when you do see things differently. And so that is one of the fruits of being receptive to that feedback, is that we actually become more open, we become more humble, we grow, we might make some tweaks to how we're phrasing or teaching things, but it blesses our lives when we are willing to both seek the light and shine a light on the things that we might be doing wrong. And then just having the humility to be open and receptive to the idea that other people might see things differently. What are your
So the
thoughts?
phrase that you said that hit me the most when you said it, I was like, yeah, I need to check myself on this more, was along the lines of we all see our truth, but we don't see the complete truth. It's
Mhm.
not, we don't see all the truth that's there. I mean, we may say this is true and this is the way it is, and that may be true, but even if we all agree that this is the truth, we don't see the full thing.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it that we don't understand. We have just one little piece of that full understanding. And yes, it is true. But at the same time, that different perspective. So I'm fascinated by light, just light.
Hmm.
If now being more grown up, if I could go back and be a physicist studying light, that would be so
You
cool.
might.
I would love that. How cool.
That's
So
awesome.
the source of light, period, is Jesus Christ. The closer we come to Jesus Christ, the more light is shined on truth for us to see different perspectives of it and different the wholeness of truth. But my truth, the way, even just the church is true, or
Mhm.
the doctrine of Christ. Take something as simple as the doctrine of Christ. Yes, we get it. But your experiences may have a completely different perspective, expanding my understanding of truth. And
Mhm.
so it's foolish of me to say it's true and just assume that that's it, period, we're done. Or
Right.
this is the best way, period, we're done. I have to be open, and like you said, I have to be humble enough to recognize that I only know a teeny bit and I could know so much more.
The way you phrased that spoke to me. You said that my experience with, and so just to kind of, summarize that, it's this acknowledgement that my experience with any truth might be different than your experience with the exact same truth. And we're both
Sure.
right. And there's this reminder in Second Nephi chapter 30, where it's talking about in the millennium, right? Like after Christ comes, there's this promise in verse 16 that all things shall be made known unto the children of men. There's nothing secret, save it shall be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
There is no work of darkness, save it shall be manifest in the light. And there is nothing which is sealed upon earth, save it shall be loosed. And I think about that, like, I think our minds are a little sealed. I think our understanding is a little bit, capped, if you will. And the limitation is our own experience. And that at some point, there is more for us to know and understand. At some point, we might come closer to seeing it all the same. But now is not that point. Like,
Right.
we're not there yet. And there is more yet to be revealed that will shine additional light on our understanding of the principles of the gospel. And
Yeah.
so I think that kind of goes back to this original point that I made, that we need to be open to the idea that other people see things differently, and therefore welcome, embrace, seek the opportunity to be corrected or to be taught or instructed by the feedback that comes from other people. And if we find ourselves responding in a way that is defensive, that's a clue to us that there might be some truth in it. There might be something for us to learn from it. And so that should be even more of an indication to us that I gotta strip away the pride here. I gotta strip things down so that I am more open and humble and receptive to whatever it is that the Spirit is willing to teach me in this moment that might bless my life.
So there are two things this discussion has done for me. Number one, an understanding or a recognition of when something like this happens to me, I need to recognize that. I want to recognize that, oh, okay, I need to be a little bit more humble, and I need to take a step back and
Right.
recognize that I don't understand maybe the whole truth, and I need to recognize that myself. And when I maybe get a little offended, I'll go, well,
What?
okay, that's the trigger for me to go, okay, let's take a look
Yeah.
at this, right? And the second thing is, I hope this happens soon. I know that's maybe nerdy of me again, but I want it to happen soon so that I can practice this and recognize it and go, okay, I want someone to challenge me. Okay,
I know, right?
for anyone listening out there, I want you to challenge me. I want to be challenged.
Right.
Please.
Right. Yeah. And like, for anyone listening also, I think that there's an opportunity to just stay engaged with other people, whether you are the teacher or you're the person being instructed. Stay engaged. Like,
Yes.
welcome conversation about topics related to the gospel. Like, don't be afraid to I'm not suggesting you invite contention or disagreement. I'm
Right.
suggesting you invite an expanding of perspective, which I think is exactly the fruit of that, I think, is unity, not the opposite.
There's a whole discussion we can have on how to
know,
create
right?
unity with, oh boy. Yes.
Stay tuned, right?
I know. That's what I'm thinking. Oh boy. That's so good. Thank you, Julie. What a great discussion.
So again, maybe I should be a little bit embarrassed because maybe, talking about that, like I said, it was a humbling experience for me, but I literally mentally walked through this while I was going through the experience. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
I walked through all of this stuff and so anyway.
Yes. Well, thank you for walking us through that as well. That is so good. I've got some things to go think about during this.
Something to think about?
And people challenge me. Please.
Do it.
I want it. All right. Thank you for enjoying this episode. If you would, please like, share, subscribe, comment. If you're listening to the podcast, if you would, leave a feedback. Let us know what you think about it.
Challenge Kevin.
What was that?
Challenge Kevin.
Challenge Kevin. Please challenge Kevin. And that just more comments makes it so that this can reach more people. Yeah. So that more people can be better teachers of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks for coming, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.